Well, it's a new year for those of y'all who've been sleeping under Kyle's rock, right? 2020 is behind us. We are moving forward in 2021, right? And starting tonight and over the next couple of weeks, we'll be talking about Jesus in a series that I've entitled Go. And as we begin this series, you're going to see a series of challenges. And tonight I will give you the first one. And again, these series, it's going to be 3 challenges that we will unpack over the next 3 weeks. Okay? And why are we calling this series Go, or why am I calling this series Go? Great question, Peyton. I am glad you asked. 3 times in the Bible, Jesus told someone to go. And here's your first blanks. These are Jesus's go. And I'm going to give you all 3 tonight, but we're going to unpack the first one. First one, Jesus said, go and do the same. And he says this to a man who had amazing compassion for others. The second, he said, go and sin no more. And he says this to a woman who was really, really messed up. Then he says, go and make disciples. And he said this to a group of men and women who were his closest followers. So again, each week of this series, we're going to take up Jesus' challenge to go and do something. And I hope you're following me, okay? It's 2021, right? It's time to not sit on the sidelines anymore. It's time to put our faith into action, to put our money where our mouth is. But you see, we have a problem. In our culture, we use the term go all of the time. We say things like, go to your room when you get in trouble. And of course, everybody loves that, right? We say, you go to the bathroom. When someone gets really angry, they might let out a phrase that says, why don't you go to HE double hockey sticks, right? The stoplight, it tells us to go. And if you're texting, by the way, you should not text and drive, but you know who you are. You get a little honk from someone behind you telling you to go too, right? Go simply means to get moving, to do something, to move along, to quit dilly-dallying around and get going. Now, I'm going to tell on myself a little bit here, and Aubrey and Jessica can testify to this, but my kids have started to repeat phrases that I say when I'm driving. So if we're at a stoplight and it turns green and the person in front of us doesn't go, Colton screams out, today! And then Mason usually goes, it's green, idiot! And where he goes, green means go! And I'm like, oh, Lord. But, again, I'm sorry about that, Jessica. But it is frustrating when someone won't go. Okay, when I was 16, when I was in high school, I had this car, a 1986 Honda Accord, and it looked like this. All right. That wasn't my exact car, but it was, you'll see in a minute. But, yeah, it was like 95. So the thing was less than 10 years old. So, anyway, that was after this. So, I started with some junk. Anyway, but I was coming home from school one day from basketball practice, and it was busy. It was right at about 5:36. We usually got out of basketball practice. And I was getting off the freeway in Jacksonville, and to go to our house, you had to turn left at the stoplight and go under the freeway in Jacksonville to go to our neighborhood. And so, again, I get off the freeway, I get up to the stoplight, and when the light turns green, everybody started to go. So I started to go. Well, then I got distracted, and I won't tell you why. Jessica knows why. But anyway, I was changing a CD. None of y'all know what that is. Y'all are too young for that. Anyway, I was changing the CD, so I wasn't paying attention, but everybody started to go, so I barely stepped on the gas to go. Well, the lady in the truck in front of me stopped for some reason. I still don't know to this day why she stopped. Well, again, I was not paying attention, so I didn't stop. I slammed right into the back of her truck. Her truck did not even get a scratch. Didn't do anything to her truck. But my Honda, it tore my hood back and tore the top of my radiator off. And this is a picture of my car, of my actual 86 Honda Accord after Dad and I got the headlights to pop back up and tried to straighten out the hood as much as we could, and then I busted the blinker, and that little thing was wrapped up, the little fender. I drove that around for a week like that. So anyway, but you gotta love the 80s, the flip-up headlights, all that good stuff, right? But the thing is, I wrecked my car all because this lady wouldn't go on a green light. Now, have any of you ever wrecked a car yet? Yeah? Any of you adults wrecked a car? Yeah? Yeah, I mean, you feel my pain, right? It's bad when you hit a parked car or something like that, right? Well, one of the times that Jesus says go is actually one of his most famous quotes, okay? It's from the book of Luke. We're going to look at it tonight, but Jesus is telling everyone a story here to help them understand what it means to love others. And you see the people that Jesus was talking to, they were religious people, but they were stuck. They said they were followers of God, but they were focused only on themselves. They were selfish and self-centered. They didn't care about anyone but himself or herself. In fact, one guy, trying to justify himself and be a smart aleck to Jesus, asked Jesus, "Oh, and who exactly is my neighbor?" Right before what we're going to dig into tonight. But the story Jesus told goes like this, and you can turn to Luke chapter 10, or you can look on the screen or get your apps, all that good stuff. But Jesus says this, verse 30. Jesus replied with a story. It says, a Jewish man was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho, and he was attacked by bandits. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him up, and left him half dead beside the road. By chance, a priest came along, but when he saw the man lying there, he crossed to the other side of the road and passed him by. A temple assistant walked over and looked at him lying there, but he also passed on the other side. Then a despised Samaritan came along, and when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him. Going over to him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine and bandaged them. Then he put the man on his own donkey and took him to an inn, where he took care of him. The next day he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins, telling him, "Take care of this man. If his bill runs higher than this, I'll pay you the next time I'm here." Now which of these 3 would you say was a neighbor to the man who was attacked by bandits? Jesus asked. Well, the man replied, the guy who asked Jesus that question I told you about, the one who showed him mercy. Well, then Jesus says, yes, now go and do the same. I love this story that Jesus tells. And you may have heard it before, because you've been in church before. Or if you haven't heard it before, you've heard of our culture even has a law that's called the Good Samaritan law. And this means that if someone is injured or hurting, that you can help them without fear of being sued by this person when you help them. I'll explain it like this. If you're at a restaurant and somebody starts choking on their food, you can go give them the Heimlich maneuver. And if you happen to break their ribs while you're doing it, it's okay. They can't sue you for that, right? It's the Good Samaritan law. You were acting in good faith to save someone, right? This law protects you. But here's why I love this passage. Jesus is challenging us to be good Samaritans. Not necessarily waiting in a restaurant for somebody to choke on their food so we can jump in and give them a Heimlich, but to be people who are on the lookout for those in need. Side note real quick, if you notice, the Bible said he was a despised Samaritan, and I'm not going to go that way tonight, but if you remember, Samaritans were a mixed breed that the Jewish people hated. So I love this story because Jesus uses a priest, and some translations say Levite, which was the temple assistant, right? Jewish people that would not help this man, but yet a despised person that these people, as soon as Jesus said, hey, this Samaritan helped this guy, they went, I don't like this story, right? Anyway, picture your school right now. Not just the hallways and the classrooms, but the faces of the people that you walk by every day. Who is lonely? Who is the person who's beat up? Which one is failing? Which one is depressed? Which one's being bullied? Who's in a pit of despair? Who just wants somebody to show compassion to them? So students, tonight I want to challenge you to do what Jesus said here. He said, go and do the same. To live like the Good Samaritan. Not just to be a nice person, but to let our love for Jesus overflow towards others. Somebody tell me what our youth group ministry verse is. In fact, it's hanging in this room right now. In love. All right? Yep. 1 Corinthians 16:14 says, let all that you do be done in love. It's what we should be doing if we call ourselves a Christian. Everything done in love. So tonight I want to give you 3 steps to be a good Samaritan. The first is this. Prepare. What I mean by prepare is be ready. Okay? Prepare. Be ready for when something happens. All right? Look at verse 34 again. It says that going over to him, this is the Samaritan going over to the guy that was beat up. The Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine and bandaged them. Then he put the man on his own donkey and took him to an inn where he took care of him. So this guy, the Samaritan, had olive oil and wine with him. Now I know some of y'all are thinking, wait a minute. Is my youth pastor telling me that I should carry a flask to school? No, that is not what I'm saying, okay? And if your parents call and tell me that I told you that I endorse drinking, I'll hurt you, okay? So, what I'm saying here, though, is be prepared. He was prepared with some simple things. Be prepared with some simple things that could help one of your fellow students out. And what I'm saying is, like, maybe memorize a few passages of Scripture or just a few verses that show encouragement, love, or strength for somebody who needs to hear an encouraging word. Maybe have an extra $5 in your wallet every week for if you see somebody who doesn't have a lunch or who forgot their lunch, that you could jump in and say, hey, let me cover that today. I want you to have lunch. Right? Maybe look for somebody if you drive. Maybe look for somebody that's walking or takes the bus to school. Offer to take them to school. Look for somebody to start a conversation with, somebody who's lonely. Maybe even carry a pack of notes, of 3x5 note cards in your backpack that you've wrote down verses on and just randomly hand them to people who seem like they might need somebody to care. What I'm saying is, how are you prepared to serve other students in your school? How are you prepared? Not only should we prepare and be ready, but we should also, number 2, we should notice or have compassion. So we should be prepared and we should notice things. We should have compassion. Look at verse 33 again. It says, then a despised Samaritan came along, and when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him. Compassion is the understanding or the empathy for the suffering of others. Compassion is the emotion that we feel in response to seeing suffering of others that motivates us to have a desire to help. Right? It's being moved so strongly that you actually get up off of your butt and do something about it. That is compassion. But sadly, compassion is an emotion that most adults have learned to either suppress, or they think the type of compassion that Jesus is talking about here is reserved only for big things like mission trips to Mexico or to Africa. But compassion is best shown in the small acts of kindness. So what I'm saying is, be ready. Be prepared. be ready, take notice, keep your eyes open. But we know from the story that Jesus told that seeing isn't enough, right? And I hope this phrase will stick with you. Write this down on your paper anywhere. I didn't make it a blank, and I should have, but write this down. But seeing is good, but presence is better. Right? Seeing it, taking notice is good, but being present is better. Jesus wants us to be compassionate people who choose to be present in other people's lives. And there is no greater act of compassion that we can have than to be with someone. Which brings us to our third point tonight. Prepare, notice, and then respond. Take action. Be prepared so you can notice what's going on, and then you can respond to it. You can take action. Most of the time we miss people's needs is because we are so focused on ourselves. Like the religious people in the conversation with Jesus, we only care about our next meal, the number of likes we get, or what our friends think about us. Well, I want to warn you, students, tonight that I have been where you are. Right? I have walked in junior high and high school shoes before. I know it's been a while, but I want to say that I come to you from the future tonight. I want to tell you that the self-centered life is shallow. It's a shallow life. The self-focused life, it's an empty life. When you focus and love only yourself, you will be miserable and you will be lonely. So what I'm asking is, what if we, 2021, what if we become intentional by walking around our schools with our eyes open, asking God to show you people and places who are in need, to show His love to them, and then to actually be aware of what is going on around us. I know that we can get what we call tunnel vision, where you're so focused on you and what your needs are that we don't see what's going on around us. But not only to see other people's needs, but to respond, to act on them. I pray that God will give each and every one of us boldness to step out of our comfort zones. Most of the time, God works the best through us when we are out of our comfort zones, because we're out of our comfort zones, so all we can do is rely on Him and become more dependent on Him. So let me ask you this. Who are you in this story of the Good Samaritan? Are you the priest who just passes on by? I love how Jesus says he just passed on to the other side like he went, kept going. Are you the temple assistant who sees him, looks at him, and then goes, you know what? I'm good. And he passes on by. Are you the person who's been beat up by the world and needs somebody to be compassionate to you? Or are you the Good Samaritan? Because being the Good Samaritan is the challenge for you tonight. And it's one from God's Word. And it's one that Jesus says, now you go and you do the same. So tonight, because Caitlin was kind enough to hang out with us or whatever, I asked her if she would share just a word about being compassionate or a Good Samaritan.
Okay, so last semester in college, I moved into my first apartment. I got out of the dorm, and I met two random roommates that I had never known before, and ended up becoming pretty good friends with them. So one night, me and Sophia, which is one of my roommates, we came in after going to get food or something, and we walked in the living room, and our other roommate was sitting on the couch crying. And so we came over and we asked her what was wrong, and she started telling us how she thought she was going to have to go home back to Oklahoma because she couldn't afford to pay her rent that month. And she told us about how she's not very close with her family. They don't have a good relationship, so she knew she couldn't ask them. She'd applied for a job, but she didn't have one yet, so she wasn't working. And she was basically all on her own at college. And so me and my other roommate, Sophia, we talked about it, and we lent her the money to pay her rent that month, and she eventually got on her feet, and now she is working and paying her own rent. So hopefully we'll eventually get our money back, but if we don't, it's okay because we did out of the kindness of our hearts. So
Amen. So again, prepare, notice, and respond. Caitlin's story shows us that we can go into our schools with compassion. They noticed their friend in need. So again, tonight, in the words of Jesus, now go and do the same.